All righty. So, do you want to start by going through your assignment?
The example, or
Yeah, your example.
so mine says, um, as a manager at a bakery, I try to treat all of my employees the same. However, when hours need to be cut or employees reprimanded, it is very difficult to not be biased. On the a familiar, excuse me, familiarity basis, by familiar, I can't say it today. The familiarity bias tends to creep in very easily. It is much easier for me to send an employee who work very often, uh, does not work very often, home or to cut their hours first. And I feel a greater loyalty to those that I work with more often and am far less likely to reprimand them or send them home early due to a need to cut hours.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean that's mine.
Yeah, I think that happens all the time in every industry, in every relationship. I think bias plays a huge part. And when there's ambiguity, it just leaves people open to assume the worst or the best, and just depending on their perspective, that can really skew things.
Yeah.
Okay. I made mine like a question. I wasn't sure if we were supposed to do it the same, but anyway, this is an example that actually happened to me when I was at BYU Provo a long time ago. Sally and Mary were friends, and both were freshmen at the University of Unity, enrolled in a philosophy class taught by Professor Plum. Sally knew that Mary and Professor Plum were dating outside of the classroom. Sally worked hard on producing a first-rate essay, and Professor Plum loved it so much he read it to the class as an example of excellence. When grades were assigned, Mary received an A and Sally received a B+ with a notation stating her paper really deserved an A, but that he did not give A's to freshmen. What form of bias did Professor Plum use when giving Mary an A and Sally a B+?
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I actually had a friend that was from my high school, and we were in the same class, and so it's like I knew they were dating, and then when I saw that happen with the grades, I'm like, seriously? So I would say that is like an attachment
Yeah, for sure.
or familiarity.
Yeah, one of the two.
Uh,
Or like so many of them go hand in hand.
anyway, so we're just supposed to go through a few questions here that they pose. Um, okay, here's the first discussion point. The title of this unit is Ethics, but according to the article you just read, at least in the case of auditors, teaching auditors about ethics will not have an impact on bias. The author suggests education that helps auditors understand and the unconscious errors they make and the reasons why they make them. For business students and others who will not be auditors, what kind of education, if any, would help future business professionals avoid bias, and is it pointless?
So we're basically just supposed to discuss these questions and then write a
No.
paragraph summarizing everything at the end.
Yeah, I think we write, have one group member submit your paragraph. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I think everybody probably realizes, maybe not always consciously, that they have bias. But I don't know if if teaching a class on avoiding bias, if that would really do any good, because you're still going to have the same biases, but I guess you could be more, make a conscious effort.
Yeah, I think when the article presented all the different kind of bias, I think that's information everybody should learn at some point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it can be avoided. I think it's just such a natural thing. I don't think it's completely objective to everything. So I don't think it would be pointless to like educate business professionals, because I think them knowing what the different kinds of biases could help, but at the same it's not going to change it completely. It's not like a thing you can just solve instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have to, somebody would have to really make a conscious effort to try and avoid bias, but I think even then it's still going to be there just because of your values, the way you were raised, all kinds of things are
Yeah,
going to play into that.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is the authors suggest that the status quo, the universally accepted practice in the United States of how audit firms are hired, paid, and work with the companies they audit results in bad audits. Do you agree? And why do you think when Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, there weren't more radical reforms like the ones suggested by the authors?
Um, I don't know. I don't feel like the process was as bad as he made it sound, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to know, really. If you're not an accountant and you're not working in that field. But
Yeah, I just feel like I just don't. I feel like you can't go like too radical on a solution.
yeah, that's why I think that trying to solve that problem through the Sarbanes-Oxley Act would have been almost an impossibility, and it would have caused more problems.
Yeah, it's like you almost have to just have a trust in the industry and hope that people have the ethics necessary. And
Yeah, I could see some sort of regulation that you maybe couldn't audit the same company X number of years in a row.
yeah,
And if people knew that their auditors could only, say, audit their books for 2 years, they're, I don't know. But then that deals with the ability of the auditors to find and keep their clients.
yeah. I mean, you could rotate which auditor at the firm works at the company.
Yeah.
I know like one auditor usually works with a company for a long period of time.
Yeah.
I just think it's something that you have to just have a trust in people in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you're going to have bad auditors, but you can't just try to regulate everything to a T.
Right.
Because it's just not practical.
Well, anything that gets regulated, there's always ways around it. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay, the next question or the point is this article is specifically about auditors, but most of the studies are about human nature in general, and a few are specifically about lawsuits. Do you think that the do you think the bias that was discovered for plaintiffs and defendants leads to a flawed legal system? Why or why not? Since lawyers are advocates for their clients, how much do you think lawyers are affected by bias? Does this create a flawed system? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a system where a lawyer is hired to advocate on behalf of her client? I think on that one, the lawyer's being paid to be biased toward their client.
Yeah, that's something I've always thought of. It's like you could completely believe your client's guilty, but you're supposed to be biased to like fight for them, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the whole legal system is based on bias, I feel
Yeah.
like. And I think sometimes that can be bad. Like you have someone who's really guilty, but because they're able to hire a really good lawyer who convinces the jury that they're not,
Yeah.
even though he probably thinks they are. I think that can be a little unjust in the legal system or a little flawed, is that sometimes it's just based on who they can afford to hire.
Yep. But I think from a lawyer's perspective though, I mean that's what they're hired and paid to do. I don't
I don't see a way to ever get rid of bias there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's a common recurring thing with all these questions, is that it's there and we should know about it,
Mhm.
but it's not entirely bad, but we can never actually get rid of it, you know?
Right. All right. Can you think of situations outside of auditing where there are lots of opportunities for bias? What could you do to change that situation?
Um, oh man, anything.
Yeah. I think especially in a work setting,
Yeah,
supervisors have their favorites, just like you were saying in your example.
yeah. I mean, I have a crew at this bakery I work at, so I have my crew, and I definitely have favorites. Like, I would much rather have this person there than this person, and so on. Like, it's super easy to have favorites, and I mean, honestly, sometimes it's like I have favorites because those people are going to help me meet my goals as a business. Because if I keep
Right.
the same person, they're going to take 3 times the amount of time to finish their work.
So, I mean, really, is there anything wrong with that? Because you're basically rewarding somebody who's doing a good job.
I don't think there is. I mean, sometimes there could be. I mean, sometimes I feel a little bad because like it's like if I send that person home early a lot or don't schedule them as much, I don't give them the opportunity to get better. But then
Yeah.
when they're at work, they don't really try to get better. So it's like, it's not that I'm like being biased because I just hate that person. It's just because they're not good for the business I'm trying, the work or the goals I'm trying to achieve. They're not
Mhm.
doing what I need. So I'm gonna go with those that are going to achieve it. So yeah, I think in the business with supervisors or whatever, that's a huge bias.
I mean, yeah, what about on a softball team? I think the same thing happens. I think it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it happens in marriages.
Yeah, I think again when it says what could you do to change that, it's just I don't think it's something that we can just change. Um, I mean, we could educate people on types of bias, so that may make them a little more objective,
Mhm.
but it's not something you can completely get rid of.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, I think the education is important. I think in life, anything that you gain more awareness about is helpful.
Definitely. The next question. Ugh. If you are an accounting major, what will you do about what you have learned from reading this article? Well, I am an accounting major, so.
There you go.
Um, there was the part where it talked about um, that it's easier to do harm to strangers than it is to people you're familiar with.
Mhm.
So I think just trying to work on the same level with every company, that even though you may have worked with this company for years and like looking at their financial information, you don't want to just be like, well, you guys did this wrong and offend them, but just knowing that they hired you for that purpose. Like you are there to evaluate them in that way, so you need to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just understanding that and not basing your work off of your relationship. I think that's a huge thing.
Yep.
That's kind of what stood out to me as I read. And I mean, I guess that question's more for me since I'm an accounting major. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I thought.
I thought of one area. I do books for a nonprofit ministry. I'm not really an accountant, but just like an administrative assistant.
Uh-huh.
And I can remember some years they didn't want it to look like they made a huge profit. So they would just say, okay, if you need to purchase supplies, order them before the end of the year. So it wasn't like anything illegal or anything like that. It was just, if I need to order printing supplies or office supplies, go ahead and do that so our numbers are lower.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I guess that's kind of a gray area, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Just kind of made me think about just little technicalities like that I encounter in my job.
Yeah. So then the last one here. Why do you think it's so difficult to overcome bias even when you know about it? I think, again, it's just so natural for us to have bias.
Yep.
And sometimes it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something that is really hard to overcome. I think we've answered that question like 1,000 times.
Yeah. All right. So then we just need to write a paragraph. Do you want me to just do that and send it to you to check, or do we want to work on it?
I guess we could do that. I mean, the basic idea of our paragraph, because we're not going to write it on all the questions, right? We're just going to
right. We're just kind of what we learned.
So I guess the basic ideas would be like bias is just a natural thing, and that educating people on it could help because they understand where it's occurring more, but it's not something we could ever completely get rid of. Like I feel like that was the basis of our discussion.
Yeah.
I can't really think of. Yeah, I mean that's going to be the basics of the paragraph.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just write it up and send it to you, and if you want to add something, just let me know, and then yeah.
Okay.
Just send me a note and let me know what you want to add maybe, and then I'll send everything in and post our hangout.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
All right. See you next week.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.